So it is my distinct pleasure to welcome to the stage the Consul General de Mexico de Vancouver, Berenice Diaz Ceballos.
Good afternoon. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people. I would like to express my highest appreciation for the kind invitation and gestures of friendship towards Mexico made by Vancouver Island Economic Alliance and its president, Julie Sperber, and our dear friend, George Hanson. I am deeply honored to have the opportunity of having the floor during this closing launch of the 16th Annual Vancouver Island Economic Summit. Also, I would like to highlight the presence here today of a delegation of distinguished Mexican companies eager to find partners in the island of Vancouver. Your attendance to this summit greatly contributes to the development of concrete ties between Mexico and British Columbia. My presentation, my PowerPoint. Well, I can continue if you want without the PowerPoint. I have it in a USB. Yeah. Sorry for that technical mistake, but we can follow up. No, well, today I have a very important message for all the people that are in this room. My central message today is that for both Mexico and Canada, and for Vancouver Island in particular, North American integration is a crucial economic concept at present. Not only because as a region that integration is already reversible in many realms, but because recent events have shown that a strongly integrated North America is essential in the increasingly complex world we live in. On one hand, the pandemic was a huge stressor that revealed weaknesses and vulnerabilities in the supply chains of our region, and also showed problematic geographical concentrations of the production of certain key components. On the other hand, and perhaps most importantly, we seem to live in an era in which the divide between authoritarian and democratic governments produces inescapable effects on our economies. First, the trade conflict between China and the USA, and later the invasion to Ukraine, have caused major economic disruptions. In this regard, North America is, first and foremost, a partnership of three democratic countries that together form one of the most important economic regions in the world. And I want to stress this: North America is one of the most important economic regions in the world. This is a very powerful basis for the deepening of our economic relations in an era of geopolitical uncertainties. In the past, the economic integration of North America has resulted in great economic and social benefits for each of its countries. It has allowed for the creation of several production chains which have become fundamental to North American competitiveness in sectors such as manufacturing, automotive, or agri-food, among others. It has strengthened the middle class and created good, well-paying jobs and new opportunities for the nearly 500 million people who call North American home. I will talk more about these opportunities in the final part of my presentation. So let's start with an overview of North America. North America is already one of the most dynamic regions in the world. According to the estimates by the International Monetary Fund, the combined nominal gross domestic product of Canada, the US, and Mexico will be close to $30 trillion this year. The region has roughly 500 million inhabitants that, while being around 6% of the world's population, represent more than 30% of the global private consumption. The three countries are market economies with a very robust network of trade agreements with the rest of the world. Trade is very intense among them. For example, on average, $1 million are traded every minute through the Mexican-USA border. Also, trade between Canada and Mexico has been steadily increasing and reached 42 billion Canadian dollars in 2021. Exports from North America as a region to the world amounted last year to $2.8 trillion, which accounts for 12% of global exports. Trade between the region and the world last year amounted to $6.7 trillion, or 16% of global trade. As you know, CUSMA, Canada-US-Mexico Agreement, is the new NAFTA. But how did NAFTA transform the region starting 28 years ago? I want to stress two key elements of the economical integration of North America from the point of view of Mexico and what we need for that integration to become more successful. First, NAFTA incentivized the development of transportation infrastructure from Mexico to the rest of North America. This map to the left was made by BNSF, one of the main freight railroads in North America, and shows the interconnections between the railroad systems of Mexico and the United States. During the past 30 years, a standardized network of intermodal transportation nodes has been developed in Mexico. Relevant to British Columbia-Mexico trade, this system connects our two largest ports in the Mexican Pacific, which are Lázaro Cárdenas and Manzanillo, to the center of the country and to the western section of the border with the United States. A parallel system of highways has been continuously updated to support the truck transportation, which remains the main transportation system for regional trade. These interconnections were crucial to sustain trade between Mexico and Canada during the pandemic, especially in the agri-food sector. Second, a reorganization of the main production industries took place since NAFTA entered into force. The stylized map to the right shows the main exporting industries by state in Mexico. As you can see, a big number of the northern states in light brown specialized in manufacturing, especially in the car, aerospace, electronics, and medical devices industry. Baja California and Chihuahua, also northern states colored in maroon, specialized in electronic devices manufacturing. The integration of the value chains in these industries allowed for a competitive North America facing an enormous challenge from Asia at the beginning of this century. This is a successful story, but we still face the common challenge of attracting investments that generates more added value for the region. For example, while the car industry is very regionally integrated, that's not the case of the electronic industry. Let's now make a brief overview of the novelties of the CUSMA, our integration framework. And here I want to stress, we are talking about trade, investment, but we need to think more in the regional integration for the region. The Canada-US-Mexico Agreement modernizes the previous agreement's disciplines, adapting them to the new needs of the 21st economy. It seeks to advance towards a more inclusive and responsible regional trade. It drives the strengthening of the North American competitiveness and guarantees certainty in trade and investments. Because of its importance, let me comment a little bit more in detail some of the most relevant features of CUSMA across its 34 chapters, including 10 which are completely new. On intellectual property, for the first time, law enforcement officials can stop suspected counterfeited or pirate goods in any of the 3 countries. On digital commerce, which was not considered within NAFTA, CUSMA prohibits the application of custom duties and other discriminatory measures to digital products distributed electronically, such as ebooks, videos, music, software, and games. On anti-corruption, CUSMA provides protections for whistleblowers and establishes new commitments to combat embezzlements. The labor chapter in the CUSMA, unlike NAFTA, is fully enforceable. CUSMA requires to adopt and maintain in law and practice core labor standards such as freedom of association and the right to strike. To comply with this, Mexico passed a reform bill in 2019, changing 500 articles of the Federal Labor Code. The deal also uses trade rules to drive higher wages by requiring that a certain percent of auto content be made by workers earning at least $16 per hour. The environment chapter of CUSMA promotes the protection of coastal and marine environments and includes provisions designed to address and reduce, for the first time in any trade agreement, marine litter. It prohibits shark finning and commercial whaling, as well as the use of poisons and explosives in commercial fishing operations, also for the first time in any trade agreement in the world. And the agriculture chapter establishes new and enforceable rules to ensure that phytosanitary measures are science-based and are developed and implemented in a transparent and non-discriminatory manner. Here comes the good part. Opportunities in trade between BC and British Columbia and Mexico. After this overview of the CUSMA framework, I will now talk about some concrete opportunities in trade and investment. What are the current main futures of trade between BC and Mexico? During the first semester of 2022, British Columbia bought 7.3% of all Canadian imports from Mexico. British Columbia is the second largest importer of Mexican products among Canadian provinces. In the first half of 2022, British Columbia exported only 2.3% of the total exports from Canada to Mexico. It was the 6th largest exporter to Mexico among Canadian provinces. In January-June 2022, Mexico ranked as the 5th origin of British Columbia's imports, after the US, China, Japan, and Vietnam, accounting for 3.9% of the total. However, Mexico was only the 21st destination of exports from the province of British Columbia, with only 0.3% of the total. What are the main products traded between BC and Mexico? Try to guess and let's see if the reality confirms your expectations. Mexico mainly exports the following products: order from the largest: audio and video equipment, vegetables, fruits, computers, copper, lead, and zinc. BC mainly exports the following products to Mexico: copper, lead, and zinc, synthetic rubber and resins, wood, machinery for the oil industry, and scientific instruments. So where are the main opportunities in trade between our regions? Let's see first opportunities for importation. This is to give you an idea of how large and strong is the Mexican economy. No, I hope everybody can read it. Opportunities in trade and investment between Mexico and BC are very intertwined, so it is best to see the whole picture from the beginning. Mexico is an exported-oriented economy specialized in the car industry, the aerospace industry, the medical devices industry, and the electronics industry. All these industries are actively looking to strengthen their supply chains. Canadian investment and exports directed to that purpose are strongly needed in Mexico. We need to be much more integrated in our supply chains. In this slide, we also see a very important and familiar Mexican export sector, food, encompassing both fresh produce and food processing. At the consulate, we are seeing a flourishing cooperation between BC and Mexican companies in agriculture. For example, we see a growing vertical integration by Canadian importers who are investing in agricultural land in Mexico. Also, you must be aware that every year 6,500 temporary Mexican workers come to work here in agriculture. Also, there are a lot of investment opportunities for AG Tech and in general, life science companies of British Columbia about investment in or collaborating with Mexican scientists and startups. Mexican producers of avocados, mangoes, coffee, coconut, and healthy processed foods are eager to enter the BC market. If you are an importer, the Mexican consulate will always be happy to help you connect with them. This is a slide prepared by Index, the association that gathers the Mexican export manufacturing industry. These are main supply needs of the manufacturing industry in Mexico. The most important needs are concentrated in Tier 1 that are interiors, engines, wheels, and braking systems, metal structures, wire harnessing, communication, and entertainment systems, and water, waste, and fuel systems. These are a lot of areas of opportunity, I think, for the people that are present today here in this room. This amounts to more than $4 billion USD in procurement by the Mexican manufacturing industry. I will share with Vancouver Island this presentation if you would like to share it with everybody. Let me finish by restating my central message today. For both Mexico and Canada, and for the Vancouver Island in particular, North American integration is a crucial economic concept at present. The Consulate General of Mexico in Vancouver actively helps Canadian investors and importers seeking the opportunities I have described. We want to work with our partners of the Vancouver Island to build a resilient and prosperous North American region, fully prepared for any possible crisis or disruption of any kind in the future. Together, North America can do more and we can do better. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much for your presentation. We do have a few moments for questions. We have microphone is over here. If there's any questions here, I actually have a question. I'll just start it off.
Yes.
I'm Consul General. Just from what you have seen in terms of the diversity of businesses and communities in Vancouver Island, and based on your presentation, is there any specific areas where you think there's collaboration or where you would encourage our participants to look at exploring further partnerships with Mexico?
Yes, as I was mentioning, there are a lot of areas of opportunity, mainly in the tier 1. I mentioned them, AG Foods, manufacturers. There are a lot of areas, and let me tell you something that we have been considering from Mexico. We talk a lot about Cascadia. No, and I think we need to think broader, because we need to incorporate not only Canada, the US, but also Mexico. As you are aware, we are all members of the TPP, Canada and Mexico. We're members of the TTP, of different agreements. So we need to use that framework that it's already in place to do better. No, so for me, there are a lot of areas of opportunity. I talked with George the possibility of doing a follow-up of this presentation with the people, and we could gather together. And if you want, I can contact people from Mexico. We can use much more the Zoom, no? But I tell you, I think, I know there are a lot of businesses here. I see a lot of faces, more than 560 people I know that were registered. So think about your supply or what is your supply or demands that you have. And I'm sure that in Mexico, we can help you to meet those supply or demands. No, but I need to know exactly what you need. For example, I have been thinking a lot of our metal mechanic pieces coming from Mexico for the business in Canada. So you give us a design, we ask in Mexico who can do it. Most of our exporters already have quality for international exportation, but we can do, I don't want just to leave it open. No, it will depend on each of the businesses, but I'm sure that we could look for more collaboration, and we can increase that 0.3 that is really, really tiny between BC and Mexico.
Lots of room to grow. I know we have one question. We have one question over here.
Gracias, otra vez. A quick question about the point you made about, maybe this is getting into too much detail, but the interesting point you made about KUSMA, or whatever we want to call the agreement of three names. You mentioned intellectual property enforcement rights, and I'm curious about you alluded to perhaps it gives law enforcement march-in rights to look at intellectual property potential infringers, but is it also sort of preliminary injunctions being granted by federal courts in each country, or is it purely a law enforcement thing, or perhaps it's both?
No. The question of international property rights, it's much more broader. I know we are aware that most of the trade between our countries many times is made by small and medium enterprises, and there are also a lot of startups. So it's a question of recognition, of keeping the patents. For example, if you made a drug, the agreement gives you 70 years before that drug can be produced by not the original producers of that drug. So there are a lot of dispositions for intellectual and property rights for writers, for music, for songs, for products. So it's the recognition by the law, it's the enforcement, but it's only the guarantees that your product and intellectual property will be respected. But it's much more broader.
Gracias.
No, de nada.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is here with us, and it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Michael Quinn, who's Provost Vice President Academic at Vancouver Island University, to come forward and introduce our keynote speaker.
Thanks so much, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Consul General Diaz, Ceballos, for your comments as well. So much potential in trade between our two areas, and thanks for including such a strong delegation with you to join us here today as well. I'm honored to be joining you here, and just want to recognize that we're meeting on to share knowledge and ideas on the traditional territories of the Nanaimo First Nation. I'm also proud to recognize that Vancouver Island University is a platinum sponsor with VIA of the summit. And I think it really speaks to the critical role of the post-secondary sector in the region. So we're very proud to be here as the local university in the Nanaimo area. I'm a relative newcomer to Nanaimo, coming from that province that will remain unnamed, just east of us here. But this summit was a great opportunity for me to learn more about what's happening in the region and get to meet some of you. I certainly look forward to meeting more of you here as I continue my tenure at VIU. What I want to do right now, though, is introduce you to our next speaker, and I'm delighted to let you know you're getting a 3-for-1 here today. We have the Deputy Premier, Minister of Public Safety, and Solicitor General, Mike Farnworth. Minister Farnworth was raised in Port Coquitlam and has lived there for more than 40 years. He earned a bachelor's degree in geography at Simon Fraser University, and he was elected to Port Coquitlam City Council for 3 terms in 1983, 1985, and 1990. He was first elected as MLA for Port Coquitlam, Burke Mountain in 1991, and has been an advocate of democracy and public service ever since. As an MLA, he served numerous cabinet positions, including Minister of Health and Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. From 2001 to 2004, he took a break from public office and worked in Bulgaria, the Balkans, and Iraq on democratic governance programs to help build multi-party democracies in former one-party states. Most recently, Minister Farnworth was re-elected as MLA for Port Coquitlam in 2020 and serves as Deputy Premier, Minister of Public Safety, and Solicitor General. Please join me in welcoming Mike Farnworth. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. And before I get to comment on my remarks today, it's funny every time I hear that intro when I get introduced, I go, I've got to get that rewritten because I've been around slides out of date. Like the first time I got elected, I did not need reading glasses, and I had a lot more hair than I do now. In the case of Port Coquitlam, I lived there, oh gosh, actually it's coming up 50 years now. So anyway, it is a real pleasure to be here and on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw people. And before I begin, I want to acknowledge the Consul General because she's been here today talking about the economic opportunities with Mexico. But just as importantly, I think it's also important to recognize the great service and the great friend that Mexico is to British Columbia, because every fire season, we rely very much on the incredibly expert trained firefighters that Mexico is able to send up to British Columbia to assist us in our fire seasons, and particularly in the last 5 years, the fire seasons we've had have been unprecedented in this province. And particularly when we had the lockdown in COVID and our usual mutual aid agreements that we have with other jurisdictions, in particular Australia, where they send firefighters up here in their off season and we send firefighters down there in their off season. That wasn't able to be done because of COVID. But I can tell you that Mexico more than stepped up. They are a partner with us every year. And I just want to acknowledge the debt of gratitude we have to Mexico for that. And also that my partner and I are going to be spending a winter vacation down there shortly after Christmas for a couple of weeks too. So looking forward to that. Anyway, I would like to start to thank the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance and President Julie Sperber. And I'm pleased to be here on behalf of Premier Horgan. After a few years apart, it really is great to be in a room full of people again. Everyone here today shares a common purpose: to build a strong future for Vancouver Island. While I'm not born and raised here, I do think of the island as my home away from home, because for almost 4 decades now, I've made the trip from Port Coquitlam to Victoria. And whether it is to hear about the important work that community organizations on this island do to provide community safety, emergency response, and crime prevention programs, or whether it's seeing the new state-of-the-art correctional center being built in Nanaimo, or touring the new Arrowsmith Search and Rescue Operations Center, where we were given a demonstration on how to rescue a climber off a stranded on a cliff. Everywhere on this island, I've encountered resilient communities, committed to creating opportunities for people to thrive and prosper. While there have been many changes over the years, I can say one thing for certain: Vancouver Island is, and always will be, a good place to live, invest, and do business. After 5 years of choices that put people first, British Columbia is operating from a strong foundation. The latest labor force survey results confirm that BC is leading Canada in employment growth. Private sector job growth remains strong as well, with some 30,000 new jobs last month. As many in this room know, small business is big business for this province. And last week, as part of Small Business Week, we recognized the incredible determination and hard work it takes to run a business, especially through these challenging years. I think of the island-based company One Feather and its work to develop technology solutions for First Nations to use. They saw demand for their services grow through the pandemic. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic is not the only challenge that still faces us. There are global pressures squeezing Vancouver Island and the country. We are experiencing a changing climate and a healthcare system under stress. We are seeing the help wanted signs at our local stores and restaurants. And without a doubt, we are feeling the pinch of rising prices from the grocery store to the gas pump. Life is getting harder for many working people and businesses. And we want you to know that we hear you and that we're taking action. In September, we announced 2 enhanced tax measures and capped rents at below inflation at 2%. A BC Hydro rebate is in the works with more details to come. And we announced support for back-to-school expenses. Of this, almost $9.5 million has gone to families in need on Vancouver Island. These steps build on our government's work over the last 5 years to end MSP fees and bridge tolls, deliver the biggest ICBC rate reduction in history, and to make transit free for kids under 12. For businesses, we've provided $500 million in grants through the pandemic, introduced greater municipal property tax rate flexibility, and expanded access to the small business tax rate. All this work and more is underway. Our choices reflect a key understanding that what is good for people is good for businesses looking to attract workers. Consider our province's infrastructure. When we build better transit, bridges, and roads, workers can easily get to work and back home. The same holds true for childcare. When we invest in affordable childcare, more people, in particular women, enter and stay in the workforce. Here on Vancouver Island, almost $430 million has gone into building new affordable childcare. And childcare fees will be reduced by as much as $550 a month this December. When we invest in affordable housing, businesses are better able to attract and retain talented workers. More than 1,200 new homes are built or underway in Nanaimo alone, including 15 minutes north of here, where work continues on 53 new 1- and 2-bedroom rentals. These suites will be geared towards people with a range of incomes. We're trying further to ease the pressure on local rental markets by building thousands of new student homes, including at the University of Victoria, North Island College, and Vancouver Island University. Whether you are a student, a business owner looking to hire, or a senior planning for retirement, a secure, affordable home is part of building a good life and for thriving local economies. Public safety is another top-of-mind issue for many in this room. And I share British Columbians' frustrations with repeated criminal activity and unprovoked violent stranger attacks. This is a serious issue that we are determined to address. A couple of weeks ago, Minister Rankin and I were able to secure a federal commitment to address repeat offending, because it's not just a British Columbia challenge, it's a national one. In fact, yesterday in Saskatchewan, their throne speech, that was one of the very focused areas that they needed help on. And we're preparing for an urgent follow-up meeting to consider concrete proposals. As we keep pressing Ottawa, we're also moving forward with measures closer to home. We are implementing recommendations from the expert panel that we received earlier this month. We are connecting repeat offenders with the supports they need to break the cycle of offending. That includes mental health, addictions, social and housing services. Our top priorities are to keep people and communities safe. The new Nanaimo Correction Facility will help provide this important service on the island. The center is expected to be operational in the spring, with the surrounding community seeing about 1,000 direct and indirect jobs during construction. As fundamental as public safety is knowing you can access healthcare when you need it. Universal public healthcare is good for people and for businesses. It's central to our identity as Canadians, and it is a key competitive advantage for Canada over the US. But right now, our healthcare system is being tested on all fronts. From the COVID-19 pandemic and the toxic drug crisis to demographic shifts, short staffing, and expanding workloads, there are significant challenges ahead. We will get through it by continuing to put people first. Whether you are a patient seeking care or a healthcare professional doing your job, the healthcare system needs to work for you. That is why we are building and expanding 17 hospitals along with cancer care centers, improving ambulance services in rural places like Port Alice, Tofino, and Alert Bay. And we're reversing past injustice by bringing 967 workers back to Island Health. There's a lot more to do, though. Last month, we launched a new health and human resources strategy. The strategy creates more opportunities for students and resident doctors to learn and train and stay as doctors in our province. We want homegrown talent to stay here in BC. And I'm confident that a province-wide expansion of UBC medical seats, including for the Island Medical Program, will help us to accomplish just that. We're here today to discuss the state of Vancouver Island. There are challenges ahead, many of which I've already touched on. But when I look around the room, I'm confident that the future is bright. The people, places, and sectors represented in this room are truly remarkable. You are a microcosm of Vancouver Island and this province's economic diversity. Together, we're growing a thriving tech sector scene, fueled by top-notch post-secondary institutions and research facilities. We're building a strong tourism network where rural communities deliver inclusive, world-class experiences. I also think of the work we are supporting in the Clayoquot Sound biosphere. Soon, visitors will be greeted by the Nuu-chah-nulth language on signs. This is just one of 50 new tourism projects we've supported this year. We have the Cowichan Valley as an established agricultural hub, along with communities such as Hornby Island that are looking to become more food secure. Our support for a new food processing facility on Hornby will help in these efforts. And of course, forestry has provided good local jobs for many generations. Forestry has a storied past. It also has a strong future in our province. That's why we've shared our vision to modernize forest policy in this province, a vision where ecosystem management, reconciliation, community involvement, and innovation are top priorities. We will get advice from a newly convened advisory council in support of forestry workers and communities. And you can be assured that the island is well represented on this council. Together, we will continue the transition from high volume to high value production. One way we're doing that is by growing BC's forest bioeconomy, and many Vancouver Island communities are leading the way. Whether it's the expanded Atlee chip plant owned and operated by the Namgis First Nation, or the Hoopacheset First Nation in Port Alberni who are harvesting syrup from big leaf maple trees, it is here on Vancouver Island that we see the power of innovation. We see local economies tapping into global opportunities. And we see clean, inclusive growth fueled by our stronger BC economic plan. There are big things ahead for British Columbia. The next decade will see more than 1 million job openings. 4 out of 5 of these will require post-secondary education or specialized skills training. We're making sure that people get the training they need right here on Vancouver Island. A new post-secondary campus on the West Shore will be a game changer. People looking to upgrade their skills can do so close to home without needing to live in or commute to another city. This campus is the result of unprecedented collaboration between not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 4 post-secondary institutes. As Premier Horgan often says, education is the great equalizer. The West Shore campus will be training the next generation of healthcare assistants and paramedics, computer scientists and engineers, educational assistants, first responders, and so much more. Everyone wins when the barriers to opportunity are removed, and we cannot afford to leave anyone behind. It will take an all-hands-on-deck approach to build a stronger province. Almost 85,000 job openings are expected in the skilled trades over the next 10 years. We need more tradespeople, men and women. Camosun College is at the forefront of this effort. They recently celebrated 10 years of their Women in Trades program. More than 1,000 graduates have gone on to build careers in high-demand areas, such as carpentry and plumbing. These graduates are hard at work providing for their families and helping to build a stronger province. We all have a role to play in building the British Columbia that we all know is possible. That's why you're all here today, to share, debate, and discuss our ideas, your ideas, for the future of Vancouver Island, the place that you call home, the place where you make your living, and the place where you raise your children and grandchildren. When we all come together to do what's best for this province, I know that there are bright days ahead for Vancouver Island and for British Columbia. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you very much, Deputy Premier Farnworth. We will open it up to some questions from the floor. Any questions before we move on? We've got the Deputy Premier here, so ask your questions while you have it. I do have a question.
Sure.
Just in terms of, so you've laid out a number of those measures. There was a presentation this morning from Daryl Bricker from Ipsos, and he spoke about the challenge of population decline globally and the challenges that are facing countries around the world, specifically Canada. A number of those things you spoke about align with that, but can you reflect a little bit in terms of that real challenge around our population, around the talent shortage that we have, and what are the things that not only what governments may need to be doing, but business and communities need to be considering as we address this?
Thank you, and that's a really good question. And before I begin, I want to acknowledge my colleague Michelle Babchuk from the North Island, who has direct experience with some of these issues. The issue of population growth and the issue of where people move to, I think, is one of the central challenges that we have to face. And it's something that government is already working on with some concrete steps. We know that when people come to this country, they overwhelmingly settle in a few places: Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, which puts enormous pressure on all kinds of housing, rents, and the ability to train people and get workers in transit, all of those things. One of the challenges we have to do is to make it so that people don't just go there, but they go to the communities that you all represent, that here on the island, in the interior, in the Cariboo, and up north. And there's a number of ways in which we can do that. In terms of training, for example, in the healthcare professions, the medical school in Prince George, we know that when people train and graduate from a particular educational institute, they are more likely to stay in that area than if they've gone somewhere else. That has to be and is part of the provincial strategy. Connectivity is absolutely crucial, because the ability for people to work remotely and the attractiveness and affordability of many communities outside our metropolitan areas makes it desirable, highly desirable. And we've seen that through the pandemic. People realizing, oh, they can work from home. That has challenges, which I think you all recognize. But given what's happening with technology and given what's happening with and the investments that are being made by the province and the federal government in improving connectivity, that will allow local communities to have much stronger economic plans, be much more attractive places for people to relocate to. And I think that's a critical way in which we can address some of the skill shortages and some of the challenges that we're facing. And finally, one of the things that has to happen is to ensure that when people move to a place, they want to know there's services there, whether there are healthcare services, whether there are schools for their kids, whether there are those important community services, because if they're not there, if you don't have a good school for your kid, you're not going to want to stay. If you don't have the public safety things, the police departments, the health facilities, you're not going to want to stay. And it's that social infrastructure that is going to be critical in our ability to make sure that our population isn't the growth is around the province and not just in those major metropolitan areas.
Any questions from the crowd? Oh, we got one right over here. Actually, we got two. So we got one here. We got one here. We'll start over here. Yeah, go ahead. Microphone's coming, but you can project. Project, yeah.
Thanks for Island finally in a position where you're seeing Indigenous communities, local government come together to. Thank you. To try to find solutions. As your government's implementing UNDRIP, are you going to continue to support these initiatives as we go forward? We talk about made for Vancouver Island solutions. The people who are dealing with the impact of that are making that now, but sometimes we feel alienated. Victoria is so close, but yet so far. And so what is your government's plans to continue to bring First Nations to help drive the economy on Vancouver Island?
Very good question. It's very much front and center in terms of our government's agenda, not only just in terms of economic initiatives, but social initiatives. We've been working very closely. And I guess the critical one right now is some of the work being done around forestry that's ensuring that Indigenous peoples are front and center in the decisions that are made on their land and their territories, and working with the private sector. And I think we're seeing numerous examples of where that is working. Just recently, well, actually last night, I met with the HISLA and the work that's being done between the HISLA and the private sector around the Cedar LNG facility up there. We're seeing co-development involved in terms of legislation, in my own ministry, for example, around the complete overhaul of the Emergency Program Act. First Nations are very much involved in the co-development of that, recognizing that in many parts of the province, disasters significantly impact First Nations communities. So it's very much part and parcel of the government's agenda and the work that we are continuing to do.
One more question over here.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. I'm just curious, since your initial election in 1991 to now, what do you see has been the biggest transformation or change in politics through that time period?
Oh, that's easy. Social media, without a doubt. And it has positive aspects, but it also has very negative aspects. I think what we've seen with social media is and it's concerning in many ways, is a decline in mainstream journalism, the loss of newspapers, community newspapers, major newspapers, and that what was the traditional way of information getting out, factual information. A lot of it now is based on what is on Twitter. You've hit me with a bugbear question here, because I could talk for an hour on this, but I won't. Just that the social media discourse has created, I think, an increasingly toxic environment in which politics takes place, which I think is harmful. There are lots of positive aspects, but the ability to spread misinformation and to do it without it being checked, I think is a significant challenge, not just here, but in democracies right around the world. And you can have things coming out of other jurisdictions. There's a whole range of stuff. I could go, I won't, because I will be here all day. But that is, without a doubt, the biggest change in politics since I was first elected.
That sounds like a subject for another talk, so we'll have to invite you for that. I'm going to now invite Dr. Michael Quinn to come forward and thank Deputy Premier Farnworth.
Thank you very much, Deputy Premier Farnworth, for your address to the summit here. A small gift of appreciation from us, representing lots of island good. I took a peek in the bag, and yeah, there is chocolate. Yes. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.